Hey folks, Steve here with another BCS video. We are now deep into the Arracourt campaign. We are in the last 4 turns. So as we're looking to do turns 10, 11, and then depending on how things are moving along here and how much I'm recording versus talking and all that, we could try to squeeze in those last couple of turns, 12 and 13. But if you're watching this video, it'll be clear in the title where we get. I also want to point out that the previous video's title, which might be confusing, is a joke. I'm ruining the joke by explaining it, but it's a turn 7, 8, 9 with a side of fries. 7, 8, 9, haha. You gotta understand I'm a dad, so I'm making the dad jokes. Anyway, uh, so we're gonna start things off here. I did do the preliminary activities uh, for this, and um, I should point out there weren't any real reinforcements. There was a chance that if the Combat Command B of the 6th Armor had been previously removed on a turn, then they could, based on the die roll, basically come back, but they never left, which was advantageous for the Allies. Um, for the weather, we're at a maybe disappointing rain turn. So we went from God, we've had one clear weather turn this whole campaign. We've gone from fog to fog to fog to rain to fog to clear to rain to fog, fog. Well, we're back to rain. So trafficability is going to be an issue, particularly for those formations that have their main supply route leveraging tracks somewhere, which is actually pretty common at this point on the map. So that could be a problem for everybody. This may slow down the tempo of operations, which really hurts the Americans more than anything, as the Germans are holding 3 victory locations at the moment, though it probably won't be long before they lose Luneville. The offset to that is visibility is out to 2 hexes again, so there would be at least some leveraging of air power if we got any, but I rolled a 5, which is 0 air points for the Americans. We don't get Bazooka Charlie, so it's going to be a slog in the rain here for this turn. Both sides may be brought on by the rain, allowing some folks to get moved up from the rear. The Americans rolled a 6 for replacements, which has allowed them to reinforce some of their armor units that were getting low on steps. Most of those went over here to the Combat Command B, which is really now bearing the brunt of what will be enemy armor nearby from the German formations. And they got 2 non-AV replacement points. The Germans rolled a 5, which means they get really as good as they can get, which is 2 armor steps and 1 non-AV steps, which led to their 11th Panzer Division resurrecting some defeated armor up here, and they'll be moving right along here shortly in the action very soon. And so just to review where we're at in terms of the status, I'm just going to adjust my stand here. 35th Infantry of the Americans pressing on the 559th Grenadier Division. There is still a play from the Combat Command B, the sort of orange-yellow formation, to try to just annoy and slowly weaken the forces of the Germans that are sitting in a victory point hex. So they've been doing attacks by fire, trying to get some lucky shots, trading away steps, hoping to make it easier for the 35th Division to come up and eventually take the victory point back. And what we would probably want to do is pull back and reinforce the Combat Command B. Keep in mind that the combat commands of the 4th Armor are buddies, which means I don't care about coordination and overlapping supply routes. I don't believe. I don't care about mixed formations. They can just help each other out very, very well. And so I will seek to take advantage of that as the fighting in the north sector here just continues to be important. Every turn is going to be important. Every formation activation will be important to see, does something give here somewhere? And that goes even for what's going on here. There's armor duels that are happening. That has a victory point contention. And it also is the deciding factor of whether or not the Americans have any opportunity to strike at Arracourt. Unfortunately, from the south, the Combat Command B of the 6th Armor is having to take a Fatigue 3 rest, and so they're going to hang for a moment and try to get some rest, get some relaxation for the moment, or at least take it easy for a day, and see then if they can eventually try to make a break here and come at Arracourt from the south. So it's going to be hard going. We'll see what happens. And then similarly, the Germans, this is their bad sector in the south. We still have a combat command reserve of the fourth armor that's way over here. That's helping to flank around and isolate the remnant defenders of Luneville from the German side. Their main formations are basically over here, and at this point, really in a defensive position. There's not much more that they can do to relieve Luneville, so it's almost certainly gonna be lost. I don't know how, and any other way that this is gonna go. I guess the real thing being, it's forcing the Americans to try to attack here, and there's still a really good number of steps left in the city holding. So it could be, I mean, if die rolls go poorly or whatever, that victory point hex may not be able to be taken by the Americans. At the same time, the French and the other aspects of the 79th Infantry Division, these guys really kind of being an anvil and these guys being a hammer, since most of the objectives are being placed over here for the 79th Division. Want to try to eliminate the remnants of the 21st Panzer. If we can eliminate those guys, and they're just infantry, there's not much to them. If they can at least force them out of the way, or the French have that situation well under control, then it's going to enable the rest of these guys to swing what is north, and try to get over to that next river line and continue to harry the 113th Panzer Division, which all of that, the whole reason, at this operational level to do that is to relieve pressure such that these guys can continue to try to drive north and allowing some of these folks right here to make that drive towards Arracourt. So I think the strategy for the Americans, who are really more on the attack at the moment than anything, or have the impetus to try to attack, they need to take Luneville. They need to try to clear the southern sector and start pressuring and heading north. They can get a victory point for Luneville. Good. Then they need to still be trying to get either Arracourt back, which might be the harder one, to be honest, or try to get back into Chateau Saline. If they can do one of those things, and maybe only one's even reasonably feasible in the amount of time left in the campaign, they'd be at 2 victory points, and then as long as they stay ahead on the artillery duel, or not artillery duel, god damn it, armor duel, the armor duels that are going on, tank duels, if they can stay ahead on that and the replacement points stay, at least even, or they stay good for the Americans and not so good for the Germans, then the Americans will win that victory point. So again, the way this campaign is going to end is going to be a bit on the knife's edge of how do some of these combats go, these desperate maneuvers to try to get more going on, and yeah, I mean that's really it. So there's still no clear, like, yes, this side's going to win. I think there's still a lot unclear on how this is going to go, and that makes for a good game. It's like, oh man, like we got to play this down to the wire, on what's going to happen. At various points, I thought the Germans were going to run away with it, and then the Americans started doing very well, but not well enough, and now we're just in this blow counter blow, which feels very good. So the final thing to mention here is that the Germans won initiative roll, or first player die roll. I'm calling it initiative roll because that makes more sense to me. They rolled a 10. The Americans only rolled a 6. So the Germans get to go first. It's hard to say, like, what's the best first activation here. Finally, some of their formations are really starting to run into fatigue. They're not at fatigue 3 at the moment, but they're getting there. So it's, do we activate any of these guys to make some kind of difference somewhere. Um, that's possible. Do they try to activate the 21st Panzer and try to extricate these guys from being slipped up? The longer those guys survive or stay alive, the harder it is for the Americans to shift all their weight going north. And if we're playing for time, that might be more reasonable or feasible to do. So maybe I'll activate the 21st Panzer Division to get them out of the hammer and anvil situation, just as that first activation, just to get moving somewhere, and we'll see what else can occur. So I'll start playing through, and we'll come back and show the aftermath of a few activations. Okay, here we're just showing where we've gotten to so far. The 21st Panzer got a partial snafu, and they're just trying to, uh, yeah, well, I guess they're better off going that way. Trying to pull back, but they don't have a lot of movement. I want them to leverage the forest, so they're staying in leg mode. They can at least hope that the forest gives them the woods, gives them some protection against the French there, but it's going to be kind of touch and go here before long. Transitioning over to the northern side of the map, we've seen a couple of things. The 35th Infantry is moving forward, trying to do some damage to the Germans there. They themselves are trying to hit back where they can, and there have been some attempts to destroy this U.S. armor unit, which is now down to one step, but they couldn't quite seal the deal. And by comparison, they've activated, and again, they're just trying to attrit away these defenders. But very likely, what we'll see is these guys pull back and these guys kind of shift into that area if they can get the right activation. With only partial activations, it's really hard for them to get to where they want to be due to the ZOCs. So still tight, very difficult to determine what's going to happen here. With the Combat Command A, there was actually some good artillery firing and things with the visibility that we have, such that we were able to eliminate some of the German armor there, which is sending them back to the dead pile, and are just kind of holding the line here. So the armor advantage is maybe still leaning into the American side. The Germans, the 11th Panzer is starting to get thinned out actually, and we're going to run into some problems where, depending on how you want to argue this, they could have mixed formations with this guy being stuck here. I need to go look at the mixed formations in the blob and see whether or not I consider that mixed. If you're looking at that and you have an opinion on whether or not that's mixed, let me know. There's the 15th Panzer that's really, here. You can draw a blob and they're here. And then you have the 111th, which is really along here, the sort of C shape with their HQ back here. And I have that die to remark that they're going next. And then their blob is kind of over here, and I don't know, there's kind of that, is a blank hex in between them enough to be distinct? I think that's the tricky thing I'm not so sure about. But yeah, so these guys will be going next. They're going to see, they're kind of, what's tough is if they proceed much further, whatever argument we have for this hex blank, if they move forward, that could actually be part of our problem. So I've got to think very carefully about how these guys move and what do they do to move, because they don't want to get mixed up. That would only hurt moving forward. So we'll play through a bit more that we'll very likely end up seeing these last couple of activations over here, an activation with the 15th, which may or may not see a lot of craziness occur. And that'll get us through this first turn of the video. Okay, here we are at the end of the turn. So things are a bit attritional. The Combat Command A has suffered some artillery fires from the 15th Panzer Grenadier, and trying to steer clear of becoming mixed. They've managed to force back elements here, so just making it tough to hold the door to make an attack on Chateau Saline. Over here, the Americans are one step closer to getting Luneville. Unfortunately, they've not managed to make a dent on these guys. I did make an error in that this should have had a step loss on the units, and that's my error. But there's still 5 steps of Germans in the city itself, so the Americans are going to have to wait, yet another turn to concentrate firepower and try to force them out. They should be able to do that soon. But we see the French had jumped some of the 21st Panzer's HQ and train, so kind of disrupting their ability to be safe. Unfortunately, they still technically have a way to try to get out of there. We can't close. We didn't have enough movement to close the whole thing on them. So it's sort of this retreating combat situation. It's going to be really hard to say like what do we do once we've succeeded there. Um, if we manage to round these guys up, I guess the French can start going down these tracks and start grabbing, trying to just come up behind and cut guys out of supply. Maybe, I don't know. We may not have enough time to make a reasonably consistent difference, I guess, is the trick here. And still waiting. I've been wanting to use this guy to do something, but he's so isolated. He's unsupported by other members of the units. He's really holding this line, hoping for an opportunistic attack, but we just can't seem to get the situation just right to do that. So still going kind of back and forth here, and I'll go ahead and get racked up for turn 11. So that was the end of turn 10, and we'll see the beginning of turn 11 here in just a second. Okay, the preliminary steps of turn 11 are complete. We at last receive clear weather, but though the Americans don't roll the best for their air points, they do have 2 regular air points, Bazooka Charlie. Both sides rolled 4s on the replacements, which means that the Americans got 2 armor, 1 non-armor replacements, and the Germans just get 1 of each. So once again, tooling up our armor in the northern sector where the armor competition remains important. Getting only 1, it was important for the Germans to return a unit onto the board. Happens to be this quite strong armor unit there with the 5/4, 5 armor value, 4 action rating. The Americans have won initiative, and there's not much else to really cover there. So it's going to be the first roll pick of the turn. It's tough. I'm kind of stuck between wanting to activate. These guys were at fatigue 3. I've decided to chance them going again. I think we need to. I don't want to just sit there because they could get outflanked, and we need to move some units around and help protect the exposed armor there. So I want to get them activated. Is that more important than bagging those guys and sort of clearing the backfield of these guys? So it's really, really tough to say. The other thing I need to be thinking about is whether or not I should be peeling these, trying to pull these guys into real units. They're weak. They wouldn't stand up to much, but I need to think if that's worthwhile here. But I'm hoping to get them out. So it's really the decision on the Americans. Like, do you try to bag these units or attempt to cover your way? And it could be I fail the die roll here, and they're in trouble. So it's like, what do you do? What can you do? I think I've got to try to do something here and just hope that the 21st Panzer gets a crappy snafu roll, but we got to make something happen over here with the Combat Command A and contest the pressure from the Germans. So I think that's what I've got to do. Okay, here we are towards the tail end of turn 11. I've actually just played through the whole turn, and I'm going to look to wrap up this video here soon. Um, so, for a brief moment, the Combat Command B of the 4th Armor managed to take Chateau Saline, only for the purple formation of the Germans, just left that guy laying around, had focused in and managed to get inside themselves, only to then have the 35th Infantry kind of push forward, raining artillery as much as they could to weaken the formation, and have not yet been able to take uh, the city with just a couple of steps holding it. And now we're going to have some mixed formations on the American side because we had no choice but to try to advance up this way. And so kind of a challenge there. On the Combat Command A side, this formation's kind of moved forward. They're also accepting mixed formations at this point because of the range advantage. He just popped a couple of American armor for no losses, and if not for some no results, might have been able to take this guy too. So the armor count up, is highly attritional at the moment. The Germans have an opportunity to maybe kind of flip the script a little bit, but their capabilities are waning. The 15 Panzer Grenadiers just doing what they can to hold steady. I think they're going to put themselves in a prepared defense. I actually forgot to do that, so we'll do that now because at this point they just need to hold the line. They need to hold Arracourt. They need to hold positions as best they can. Um, but now you can see the Americans are chasing the 21st Panzer over to the last river line at this point, and just this whole southern sector is now in the Americans' hands. There's still one step left now in Luneville, which the Americans will clear either via attrition or combat, and then it'll be a drive north towards Arracourt. Just the last couple of turns. I don't think they're going to be able to get there. So it's really going to probably come down to this being the most critical area. What can be done to save the situation, and it's not looking particularly good for the Germans in being able to hold Chateau Saline. The armor stuff is tough call right now, though I kind of get the feeling like the Americans will win out on that one. So still coming down to the wire, still no clear victor at the moment, but we'll have to see how things develop. So I'm going to go take care of the preliminary stuff for turn 12, and we'll come back after that. Here we are at the start here. Now I've opted for pretty much anybody who's at fatigue 3 is going for it with the hope that they can activate and still do something. It's like every activation, every second matters over here, and we don't have time to stop because it's the second to last turn. So the weather is rain. There's no air power for the Americans. The Americans did get a 5 on replacement, so they got some armor, which is coming back on, and an infantry step. The Germans rolled a 3, which means they only got one armor step replacement, but they did bring back one of their better armor units over here. And everything else is really just going to come down to the way the die rolls all come. The Germans have won initiative, so it's really their move. I have set up a reinforcement here to try to jump the HQ. That could be a very potent thing to try to do right now, but I'm not sure that that'll be. It'll just come down to the activations at this point. So with the Germans going first, we'll play through some of this turn again. There's not much to show now here, right? There's certainly some important die rolls that are going to take place there. Probably some more armor shootouts and fighting over here. The artillery may be a really key factor there. Visibility is at 2 hexes. And over here, we would expect Luneville is going to fall almost guaranteed. There's not much more the Americans can do on Arracourt right now. It's just not coming together for them. At most, maybe what they can do is try to delete some of these guys, maybe with some artillery or something, and get it in such a way that they can try to make a last-ditch attempt on it. But it's going to be really hard going there. So let me get rolling, and we'll see what happens. Okay, here we are at the end of the second to last turn. The Germans continue to hold Chateau Saline. They're filtering through weakened units into various spaces to operate. Oops, I forgot to move this guy back a hex. There you go. Enjoy. Um, and so they're still holding, but just barely on. They had tried to run some interference over here. It's not going well, but we've got some mixed coordination formations that are going to make it harder and harder to activate, which could mean the Germans have solidified their hold over a victory space. Here, it continues to kind of be a rough set of artillery duels in the rain. There were failed activations on their part, and here, which is limiting our ability to make any gains for Arracourt. The 15th is kind of holding steady, starting to pull units back, and the Americans have indeed captured Luneville. The 21st Panzer has its support units deployed as real units, though one of them has already gotten destroyed, and they're really down to one unit left, though the French have been rebuffed a bit. So as it stands right now, the dead armor pile, the Americans are winning that by a bit, or quite a bit even. And they've taken Luneville. So it's 2-2 victory points right now, which could lead to a draw. That's kind of a, I don't like draws. Nobody likes draws, but that's probably the way this is going to go as things are wrapping up here. It's going to be really hard to see, can the Americans get into Chateau Saline? And it's going to come down to a die roll to continue with these guys. I'm going to have to force them at fatigue 3 to just continue on. And I've gotten really good with fatigue rolls, but over time it's just built up and there's not much more I can do about it. So we'll go into the last turn of the game here. Really unclear on what's going to happen. There's only so much that reasonably could happen. And so we'll have to see where we get to here. So we'll get the preliminary steps for the last turn done and we'll play through. Okay, preliminary steps for the final turn. It's forcing many units to be in the fatigue 3, basically needing to roll to activate, and then do snafu, which, I mean, we could see a whole lot of nothing happen. Fog has returned. I think we've only had a turn or two of clear weather this whole campaign. So we go from rain to fog. No air points for the Americans. Both, the Americans rolled a 6 for replacement, so have managed to return many armor units to the board, so they're starting from a very, very good place. The Germans rolled a 5 and were able to return 2 armor units to the board with 1 infantry replacement. And from here on out, it's going to just be really interesting what else can happen. The Americans won initiative, so it's their first attempt to make something happen. I do think they're going to want to try to get into Chateau Saline. It's almost like there's nothing else for them to really accomplish other than ensure that they have an armor, the armor advantage, which I don't see that really changing. And in fact, we'll probably pull back some of our exposed armor in various places to ensure that they're relatively safe. And it all comes down to Chateau Saline because I don't think we can get into Arracourt in one turn. I just don't see how that's possible. I just don't see it happening. Luneville is safe. So it's all down to this. I might even get to the point where if we've activated everybody over here, there's no point in activating over here unless there's truly a unit that could be in danger. But I'm not, we'll see. So I'll play through this last turn, folks. It'll be probably a pretty quick playthrough for me. I'm not going to show everything on camera. I'm just looking to get this campaign wrapped up here. And we'll probably be doing a post-mortem video separately and a review separately from this. Okay, folks, we have a winner chicken dinner. The Americans win by a hair. So here in the last phases, this is really the main focus of this last turn was here. Is the only thing that really actionably mattered. The Germans tried to come down and figure out a way to try to disrupt or hurt the Combat Command A. They just didn't do enough damage, and in the way that the operations went, Combat Command A managed to fight their way into the city. They had done so thanks in part to the mechanized infantry capability here that we talked about, before, this functionality that I hadn't been making use of. Well, that did help us get into the city. just being able to get in and around and still have an attack left to get in, attempt to get in the city. A very lucky die roll of 11 had gotten them in there, had finally attrited away this formation here. This formation had 2 activations. They got double activations, and in all attempts to retake the city, the Germans failed. They rolled pretty low, like 4s both times. And they couldn't get back in. And so as I'm looking over the map, I'm double checking supply. We've got a little bit of mixed formation craziness going on here, but these guys are buddies, so not so bad. If I look at that, it is, that's a victory point. Germans maintain control here. The Americans would have control of here no matter what. There's really nothing that the Germans are going to be able to do to take it back at this point. No matter what they tried, it just wouldn't matter. And then when we look at the dead pile of armor units, it is 3 to 5. And I'm looking like there's a chance that the Americans could actually, if I went through with the activations, could rack up maybe one more kill on the Germans. It wouldn't even necessarily be that hard to try. Could certainly do it. And I can pretty safely keep the rest of the Americans away. That is a victory point for the Americans. So all told, that's 3 to 1. That is an American victory in the campaign of Arracourt, and it took really down to the last turn to struggle and find a way to do it. Again, I feel a little weird because if the game went on another turn, who knows what would happen, right? It's like, do you fight down to the nubs? At the end of the day, the American, I think, strategically speaking, the fact that the Americans really have the ability to roll up the flank now, there's really little keeping them from being able to do that. I guess if the campaign was to keep going, these Americans over here would be nothing but a distraction holding force, a pinning force, while, over the course of several days, the Americans would continue to take their time going through north, disrupting these formations, cutting off supply and other things where it wouldn't matter if the Germans held this for even a little bit, because eventually the situation would just be untenable. So that's it. That's the end of the campaign. We made it through the whole way through a BCS campaign, granted a smaller one, certainly. And I'm going to get this video up, and in the next video, which may be a few days away, we'll do a post-mortem, and we'll talk a bit about how the whole campaign went, and we'll eventually get a review coming soon. So thank you for watching. Hope this was entertaining. The finale ended out here. Again, not much more that could be done to really change the game situation. Not enough movement to get units over here to pull off a real attack. So it just sort of, relaxes into that state at this point. So, yep, we'll see you later, guys. Take care. Keep gaming.